Hey folks, MasakoX here. Even the smallest of characters, both figuratively and literally, can make the biggest of waves. Babidi here, for example. This potato might not have seemed all that great, but he was the one to bring out Majin Buu from his slumber. No one else did. And from there was able to ultimately lead to the planet's destruction. However, in this timeline, he was able to be spared by a very merciful Goku, who took pity on him, and from there was brought into the care of Piccolo. Granted, this wizard is still hopeful of getting some kind of revenge or retribution for his undignified status on Earth, but now there are more important things on his mind, such as his powers being curtailed somewhat, and the possibility of there being a pretender for a status out there in space, for the heir role of Babidi. In the last part, we were dealing with the events of the Universe 6 tournament, and afterward, Babidi had actually enjoyed that contest more than he thought he would. But he enjoyed getting back to his study on Lookout even more. With he and Dende working together, they were both learning from one another. In order to test out some cool new powers that he'd been cooking up, that he had discovered, he would need some willing volunteers. And who better than Goten and Trunks? They were game for anything. Babidi was able to successfully try out some more brand new buffs and boosts for the Dragon team to potentially use. His logic being that if he were going to be around here for a while, he may as well try and curry favour with his caretakers, for some other kind of benefits, or for them to just leave him alone. These modifiers were proving to be quite remarkable, and worked pretty much flawlessly. When they got back though, from one particular test session, all thoughts of magic were cast aside, all upon the discovery of a machine that not one of those three recognised. This was Trunks' time machine, and he had come back from there with some very grave news, and an urgent request for help from all concerned. Will Babidi choose to find a more willing tester to try and fight for the future? Again? Let's resume. After a few tense minutes, future Trunks was slowly coming back to his senses. He had been taken inside by Bulma and Goku, and was very unsure as to where he was. Soon enough though, he started to recognise the place that he was in. It was Capture Corp. He was relieved that he had managed to get back to the timeline of his former allies and not another one. But even then, he wasn't fully cognizant. His last memories were quite blurry. They involved escaping from... there it was. But he recognised some of the voices. There were Piccolo, Krillin, the younger version of his mother. But as he opened his eyes fully, he saw him, of course. He was the one behind the whole thing! With one swift move, Trunks fully regained his senses and powered up to Super Saiyan, leaping out of the bed and straight at Babidi. The wizard just had enough latent power to conjure up a magical shield that could barely absorb the hit. In the room, there was an almighty struggle, and Babidi's eyes were popping with fear as the sword was slowly breaking through the hastily put together shield.
What's the matter with him? Somebody do something! This madman's going to kill me!
Goku rushed in to try and stop Trunks by doing what he does best. A full Nelson. That's enough, Trunks! Babidi's with us! He's not a threat, relax!
He took your minds in his timeline, that scum! I'll deal with him as I did in my timeline! You need to be stopped!
The group were genuinely worried that all this time travel had actually started to addle Trunks' brain somewhat, as he was a bit loose in the head. He was not willing to listen to reason. Babidi was completely spooked by this show of power, but bits and pieces were starting to fall into place for him. With each passing moment, he started to figure out who this guy might be, from things that he'd been told. They called this guy Future Trunks, and he seemed to be familiar with him.
Trunks, stand down!
Vegeta bellowed throughout the room. The prince had entered, after hearing the news that his son from the future had miraculously returned. He viewed the scene with a stern expression before managing to overpower Trunks himself, stopping the situation from escalating even further.
If we were really controlled by that potato over there, you would see a stupid-looking M on our foreheads. Do you see that, boy?
Babidi took exception to the insignia.
It's not stupid,
he mumbled under his breath.
Father,
He looked around, everyone looking concerned and sane. Not to mention scared as to what he might be doing next. Also, they were certainly pulling their punches. If they had truly been taken over by Babidi, he probably wouldn't have been allowed to wake up.
I'm sorry, it's just... I was running from someone who looked just like Goku and, I got confused. I'm sorry.
Babidi glared at him, still inside his bubble, just in case this was a bluff.
For your information, boy, you're quite wrong in your deduction. Even if I did want to control Goku over there, I'm not able to. I have never been able to take over his mind. He is too pure. Also annoyingly simple, which makes things worse. Not that I haven't tried to at some point over these years, but no. We are playing on the same team, as it were.
Piccolo, do you trust this thing?
The Namekian shrugged.
Not entirely, but we've learned to live with him, and he's slowly learned to live with us.
Yeah, Hey!
Bulma gave Trunks some water and she looked very worried.
Relax, Trunks. Don't worry about Babidi. He has his uses, and he's helped me out a lot. But what about you? What are you doing here? You seem distressed. Is everything alright in the future?
Trunks looked very nervous and mumbled,
No, there's barely any future left.
The mood was still, anxious to know what had gone down in the future that Trunks had supposedly gone back to fix.
Can someone explain to me who this guy is?
When Bulma had asked the group to give Trunks some space and they ventured outside, Piccolo then gave Babidi the quick rundown as to the identity of future Trunks and the past events associated with him before Babidi's initial push at the beginning of the Buu Saga.
Wait, you're in contact with Vegeta's son from another timeline who supposedly also killed me? Other me, at least. Not me, and you're so casual about it?
Babidi had seen a lot of things and learnt of many powers that were possible within the greater galaxy, but when it came to the likes of time travel, he thought that it was something that were completely impossible to attain, that it was beyond the reach of mortal beings, even if they were composed of magic. If a wizard had conquered space-time, the devastation left in their wake could have been monumental. Chalk 1 for science on that one. Piccolo, though, was indeed not bothered with this revelation.
Doesn't feel weird than a space wizard with the king of the demons for a sidekick. Still can't believe you pulled that off.
Babidi, instead of calling that a little dig, well, he took that as a compliment. He was able to hook the king of the demons, hook, line and sinker.
And you said that Bulma, future Bulma I mean, had managed to make a time machine.
Yes, the one he came in just now. Why are you so surprised? Don't tell me this is something that you don't know.
Once again, Babidi was utterly flabbergasted, holding his massive potato head in disbelief at the sheer blasé nature that Piccolo was exhibiting about such a monumental discovery.
Don't you understand?
Babidi blurted out after having his head blown.
Do you have any idea how many civilizations, how many mages and scientists have spent trying to discover the secrets of time travel? And you are seriously telling me that I'm going to make myself 5 years younger with the Dragon Balls just built one in her backyard?
Was Bulma for you? It's kind of her thing, to make the impossible possible.
Babidi was thinking through the possibilities. This was possibly yet another tool for his ultimate conquest, his dream of total domination of all. He began to daydream of him acquiring the machine, being able to harness Bibidi's power for himself, or getting Buu before his father. Oh, he dreamt about that for ages. But maybe that dream wasn't a dream, but it was a prophecy. He could become like a god if he could control time. He could even control Beerus before he was a god. He could become the destroyer apparent, not him. And those idiots were doing nothing nearly as grandiose as that. They were just using these tools for extended family visitations. And something about Goku being a doppelganger. What a waste.
Does Beerus know about this?
Piccolo looked at him puzzled.
But what?
The time machine, Grin Man, the time machine!
Piccolo thought about this for a second.
I don't think so. Why?
We'd better make sure it stays that way. I've been around the block many times concerning Beerus Piccolo. I don't think the cat would be very happy about time travel being available to mortals. I'm pretty sure that angel buddy of his would like to limit that practice to himself.
Piccolo was getting a little nervous.
But what do you want us to do? Lie to Beerus?
Not necessarily, just try to not make this time machine obvious to them. Gods can be pretty, touchy about things like this.
That was a pretty good shield back there, by the way. If not for that, I probably imagine we'd have to gather up your head from the floor and scrape what was left of you off the wall.
He gave the wizard a smirk. Babidi instead scoffed.
As if you would care.
Gathering the Dragon Balls to revive you would take us a whole day.
Wait, would you guys really?
Babidi was kind of taken aback by that remark.
Why not? You had our back during Frieza's little hissy fit.
Babidi said nothing for a good minute.
Oh, but you said earlier you lot still don't trust me fully.
You're hung up on that? Heck, I still don't fully trust Vegeta. You come to terms with that and move on. There's no point dwelling over it. Besides, I believe that the word you are really looking for is thank you.
I believed you didn't have a need to revive me yet, so I had no reason to thank you.
Piccolo smirked slightly.
Whatever.
With that, Piccolo walked off to get some sleep. Important meditative practice under his belt. Totally not a nap. However, Babidi just simply glared at him as he walked away. That was quite a big admission of confidence, without using such words. This was making things all the more complicated. Now, things were a little less cut and dry in regards to his domination of space-time. He decided to clear out his head and instead check out the situation with the other Trunks. He seemed a little bit calmer now. When Babidi got to where Trunks was located, Bulma was busy taking care of the time machine, trying to reverse engineer some of the damage that had been befalling it, and looking at her future self's notes. But that wasn't the reason that Babidi had come to call. Something which interested Babidi immensely was future Trunks recounting his time in the future. He was just getting to the part, quite conveniently, of his dispatching of the versions of Deborah and Babidi from his realm, something which made Babidi feel at first uncomfortable. But then he also had a strange macabre feeling of curiosity. He actually wanted to know how he died. And yet, it wasn't his exact self, so he didn't feel all that bad. That sounded like a future him problem anyway. However, Babidi lamented the Supreme Kai still all the more for his meddling affairs. Had Shin stayed out of everything, everything would have been far more likely to have gone his way. But what was also quite disconcerting was this whole Black debacle. Babidi had no idea who this person could have been. How could Goku ever have become someone who would pick such an edgy new name? Did one of those timelines encroach into Trunks' one? A time where Goku had grown sick of being a goody two-shoes and simply snapped? Trying to pick up the good timelines one by one? Babidi thought for a moment that maybe he could work with this new fellow. After all, the King of the Demons was no match for this future boy, but this Black made said boy scurry away for help. Should he prove to be stronger than the real deal, then all bets were off. But he then had to step back. From what Trunks had said, he might not be willing to talk this Black, from the sound of things. He worked alone. This whole annihilation for the sake of justice thing was not really Babidi's cup of tea either. So if he was that kind of crazy, he wasn't really Babidi's kind of crazy. That sadly meant that yet another one of Babidi's schemes had to be put on the shelf. Black might have been powerful, but probably would have been a nightmare, a complete pest to work with. At least Deborah was compliant. The Saiyans, like the brutes they were, obviously, decided to show off their new powers to their future friend. But the future boy was blown away by Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Didn't take much to impress him. He'd have thought that Super Saiyan 2, which was the strongest power up he had seen previously from Gohan, was the highest you could go. Vegeta, though, was laughing.
You call that the strongest? Please, he'll be gasping for air in a few minutes if he's that tired. No, we've gone far beyond that freak show.
Hey, snarled Goku. If it weren't for this power, Majin Buu would have killed us all.
Trunks, in the middle of this, was even more overwhelmed by how this brand new power was already obsolete. How far had they gone? Babidi then decided to stick around and observe, instead of retreating to look out for further personal growth. In the end, it was actually good brain fodder. He didn't really have to think much watching it. And yes, this boy was respectable. But this poor fool did not know that Goku was merely toying with him. Babidi could swear that if it not for that simplicity that he could read from his mind, he would have thought that Son Goku had a hidden cruel streak, toying with Trunks. But suddenly, a weird thunderstorm appeared, which alarmed the wizard and all concerned. And, wouldn't you know it, the boy was not lying. Son Goku really did have a doppelganger. But this one was way too well spoken for Babidi's liking. This was not the Son Goku he knew. And it was clear that this fool was outclassed by the original too.
You may be showing off some new threads, buddy, but that power of yours
Mumbled Babidi.
is pathetic.
He couldn't even go Super Saiyan. What a joke. During the fight, Babidi attempted to use some of his newly tested magic to try and access the mind of this invader, but was met with a blockade when it came to their deeper thoughts. He was met with a refigurative brick wall, but what he did manage to glean was something. Just from reading the outskirts of his mind, he could figure out that this being was definitely not Goku. Whoever was in there was hijacking Goku's body, clearly not an illusion either. And there was something divine about it? Yes, definitely divine. Before Babidi had managed to take a closer look, the aggressor had already been pulled back into the same portal from whence they came. Rats. But it was curious though. He can't stay in this timeline for long. There had to be a lot of weird shenanigans happening here. Babidi decided to share his observations with Piccolo and Vegeta.
So you are saying that this imposter is some sort of godly being, and not Kakarot?
Vegeta raised an eyebrow, not really believing him.
That would be my understanding, yes. Something is going on here, and it has something to do with the realms of the Kais, but this doesn't make any sense. Kais are supposed to be benevolent, simpering creatures. Why would one suddenly go rogue like this and hijack mortal bodies?
Well, I know who we need to contact to deal with the issue, said Bulma.
And she was already on the blower to Whis. Babidi gulped loudly. Oh, why did they always have to bring Beerus into this? And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you like this story, check out this one, where Chi-Chi became a magical fighter, and in fact, a lot more easy to deal with. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!